What if the person you've loved your entire life was a complete stranger? For Eleanor Vance, this wasn't a hypothetical question. It was the bombshell that detonated her world at 72. For 64 years, her marriage to Arthur was a bedrock of quiet, predictable love. He was a civil engineer, a doting husband, a pillar of their community. But after his death, a hidden case reveals an impossible truth. Arthur was a decorated British spy, a man with a different name, a hidden past, and a set of skills that belonged in a blockbuster movie. Not a quiet suburban home. They tell you that love is built on trust. But what happens when that trust is revealed to be the greatest lie of all? Every shared memory is now tainted. Every loving gesture, a potential act in a meticulously crafted cover story. Was their life a beautiful romance or a masterful deception? Now, Eleanor must embark on one final mission, not for queen and country, but for her own soul. She must unravel the tangled threads of her husband's secret life, a journey that will lead her into a world of danger she never knew existed. But be warned, the secrets buried in Arthur's past are not all dead, and discovering the truth about the man she married might just get her killed. The house was quiet, suffocatingly so. For 64 years, Arthur's presence had been the steady rhythm beneath the floorboards, a hum she had taken for granted. Eleanor ran a trembling hand over the worn leather of his favorite armchair, the faint scent of his pipe tobacco clinging to the fabric like a stubborn ghost. Every photograph on the mantel, every book on the shelf was a testament to a shared life, an amazing partnership she thought she knew everything about. They were supposed to celebrate their next anniversary, but now she was alone. She began the task of sorting his things, a final painful duty in his study. A place of meticulous order, a single volume of Shakespeare felt odd in her hands, heavier than it should be. Her tenacious curiosity, a trait Arthur always teased her about, took over. It wasn't a book at all, but a cleverly disguised box with a soft click. It opened not to yellowed pages, but to a hidden compartment, revealing a world she never knew could occur within the walls of her own home. Her breath caught in her throat. Inside lay a collection of items that made no sense. There was no sentimental stash of letters, but a sleek foreign passport with Arthur's young face staring back under a name she'd never heard. Julian Thorne. Beside it lay a small, clinical-looking syringe with a vial of clear liquid and a lifetime supply of questions. A cold wave of disbelief washed over her, short-circuiting every cherished memory she held dear. Beneath the passport was a small leather-bound journal, its pages filled with a dense, coded script. Her initial analysis told her this wasn't just a secret, it was an entire system, a whole other existence hidden in plain sight. A single line on the inside cover was written in plain English, in Arthur's familiar steady hand. Her eyes scanned the words and the floor seemed to drop out from beneath her. It read, "If you are reading this, Eleanor, it means they found me." Arthur, or Julian, or whoever he was, had been a man of quiet routines. He was the civil engineer who complained about city council regulations, and the husband who always remembered her favorite flowers. Eleanor's entire memory was a carefully constructed facade. She thought back to his almost supernatural ability to recall details, a trait she found amazing for remembering birthdays and obscure anniversary dates they would celebrate. Now she saw it for what it was, the cold, disciplined tool of a professional spy, a man whose mind was a weapon. The stark contrast was nauseating. She remembered him teaching their son to ride a bike, his hands steady and patient. Were those the same hands that had held a weapon, that knew how to use the sinister-looking syringe from the box? Every mundane act was now suspect. Did a simple business trip to supply building materials mask a clandestine mission? How could such a dichotomy occur in one man, a loving partner and a hardened operative, living side by side in the same skin for 64 years? Her mind reeled, trying to conduct a frantic analysis of their shared past. That odd fluency in Russian he'd passed off as a university hobby, his sudden, unexplained illnesses that kept him isolated for days. It was all part of the system. She had believed. His life was an open book, but it was a novel written in invisible ink, and she was only just now holding it up to the light. The man she knew was a ghost, a cover story told with such tenacious dedication that he had become the part. She felt a fresh wave of grief, not for the husband she'd lost, but for the one she'd never truly known. The note's warning, "They found me," was no longer an abstract threat about a stranger named Julian Thorne. It was about Arthur, her Arthur. Just as that terrifying thought solidified, the old rotary phone on the hall table began to ring, its shrill metallic sound cutting through the silence of the house like a gunshot. The ringing continued, a relentless, mechanical summons from a world she wanted no part of. Each shrill burst chipped away at her denial, forcing a choice upon her. To ignore it was to cling to the fragile memory of her 64-year life. To answer was to step into the shadow of Julian Thorne. Her hand, wrinkled and spotted with age, hovered over the receiver with a sudden tenacious grip that surprised even herself. She lifted it, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was about to confront the ghost in her own home. A clipped, anonymous voice, devoid of warmth, met her silence. "The package has been compromised. Do you have the supply?" The voice was cold, efficient, part of a system that didn't care about grief or confusion. Eleanor's mind flashed to the box, to the passport and the syringe. She said nothing, her throat tight with fear. The voice sighed, a faint hiss of impatience. "Check his analysis of the 68 celebration. Acknowledge." Before she could form a word, the line went dead, leaving only a dial tone in its wake. The 68 celebration. It took her a moment for the memory to surface. Their 20th anniversary. A small party in this very house. Arthur had given her a beautifully framed photo of them from that night. Why that? Her mind raced. It couldn't just occur to the caller by chance. She hurried to the living room, her mission clear. Taking the photograph from the wall, her fingers fumbled with the backing. It was heavier than it should be, the frame thicker, prying it open. She found not cardboard, but a hollowed-out compartment. Inside was a single small brass key attached to a tag with a number 317. There was also a folded, yellowed newspaper clipping. It was an obituary from 40 years ago for a man killed in a tragic engineering accident on a bridge Arthur had supposedly been designing. But beneath the man's name, Arthur had written a single, chilling word in tiny script, a word that shattered the last remnants of her safe, ordinary world. Target. Was their life together? Genuine. The question echoed in the hollow chambers of her heart, a relentless torment. Every loving glance, every shared laugh, every quiet moment they used to celebrate was now subject to a brutal analysis. She looked at their wedding photo, at the amazing, hopeful young woman she'd been, standing beside a man who was a ghost. Had she been in love with a character, a meticulously crafted illusion, designed to deceive not just the world, but her? The foundation of her entire life had crumbled to dust. She remembered a time about 30 years ago when their son, Robert, was sick with a fever that wouldn't break. The doctors were stumped. Arthur, the tenacious civil engineer, had stayed up for 3 nights straight, researching obscure medical journals until he found a potential cause. He had presented his findings to the doctor, who, though skeptical, followed the advice, Robert recovered. Was that the calculated act of an operative protecting his cover, or the desperate love of a father? How could a lie feel so profoundly true? The sense of betrayal was a physical ache, sharp and deep. She had been his greatest secret, the centerpiece of his cover story. Her life wasn't her own, it was a stage, and she had been the unknowing lead actress in a 64-year play, the friends they'd made, the community they'd built. Was it all just part of the system, a network of assets and liabilities? The thought that her most precious memories were nothing more than collateral in a hidden war was almost too much to bear. Yet, she couldn't completely discard the feeling of his love. It was a tangible thing, a force that had shaped her, comforted her, and defined her. The deception was a fact, but the love felt like one. Too, as she stared at the key and the obituary, a new, more devastating question began to form. A question that eclipsed all others. If his mission was so important, why leave this trail of breadcrumbs for her to find? Was he trying to warn her, or was she his final, unwitting assignment? Eleanor began to think about Arthur's generation, the one Tom Brokaw called the greatest. They were forged in the Depression and tempered by World War. A cohort of men who learned to build, to sacrifice, and above all, to keep their mouths shut. Duty wasn't a concept they discussed. It was the very air they breathed. Secrecy was a tool for survival, a shield for their country and their families. This taciturn nature, which she had always attributed to his quiet personality, was actually the uniform of an entire generation of silent patriots. Her analysis of him began to shift. He wasn't just a liar. He was a soldier who never left the battlefield. Every choice he made was dictated by a system of honor. She was only now beginning to comprehend. The amazing tenacity he showed in his work, in their life, was the same discipline that kept his secrets locked away. She wondered how many other men on their quiet suburban street held similar burdens. Their ordinary lives a cover for extraordinary service. It was a chilling thought that a whole world could occur just beneath the surface of her own. The memory of the vial and syringe took on a new, grimmer meaning. It wasn't the tool of a simple killer, but the last resort of an operative, a final, terrible supply of escape or defense. She pictured a younger Arthur, a man who had seen things he could never speak of, who carried a weight she could never have helped him bear. They would celebrate anniversaries and birthdays, and all the while, he was fighting a war inside the walls of their home, a war she never even knew was being waged. This new perspective offered no comfort, only a deeper, more profound sorrow. He had sacrificed his identity for a cause, but in doing so, he had sacrificed their truth. Understanding the soldier did not erase the betrayal of the husband as she stood there, lost in this painful reconciliation. Her eyes fell upon the key again. The number 319 seemed to mock her. It was a piece of his secret life, a life of duty and danger. And suddenly she realized with a jolt of ice-cold fear that whatever that key opened was not in the past, it was in the present. The initial shock had receded, leaving behind the cold, hard bedrock of a new reality. Eleanor stood in the quiet of her living room, the small brass key a heavy weight in her palm. Mourning the Arthur she knew felt like a betrayal to the man he truly was, the stranger who had loved her for 64 years. A new tenacious resolve settled over her. She would not let his life, his real life, remain a secret. This was no longer about sorting through the past. It was about finishing his final, unspoken mission. Her first step required a practical analysis of the situation. The key, numbered 317, was her only lead. It was a long shot, but she started with the downtown branch of their lifelong bank, a place she hadn't visited in years. The sterile, quiet hum of the financial system felt a world away from the espionage and danger that had secretly defined her life. With a courage she didn't know she possessed, she approached the manager, ready to supply whatever story was necessary to get access to safe deposit box number 317. The manager, a prim woman half her age, was predictably resistant, citing policy and protocol. But Eleanor was no longer just a sweet old woman. She channeled Arthur's quiet authority, her memory latching onto a story he once told her about emergency protocols. She spoke about a contingency plan, a name he had told her to mention if a specific situation should ever occur. The manager's skepticism wavered, replaced by a flicker of recognition and fear. Without another word, she led Eleanor down to the vault. The box was old and surprisingly light. With trembling hands, Eleanor inserted the key and turned. The lock clicked open with a sound that echoed the opening of Arthur's hidden book. Inside, there was no amazing treasure, no stacks of cash, no secret documents. There was only a single, brand-new syringe, identical to the first, and a small, folded piece of paper. On it was a hastily scribbled address for the house across the street, and 2 words that made her blood run cold. "They're watching." Eleanor's journey didn't end in that vault. It was a new beginning, forcing an ordinary woman to confront an extraordinary world hidden in plain sight. Her story is a testament to the fact that we can never truly know the depths of the people we love. She was left to reconcile the quiet, gentle husband who remembered her favorite flowers with the hardened spy who lived and died by a code of secrecy and sacrifice. Her quest for truth became the final chapter of their love story, a chapter Arthur himself wrote for her to find. This saga forces us to ask ourselves profound questions about love, identity, and duty. Can a lie that protects be more loving than a truth that harms? Arthur dedicated his life to a cause, but in doing so, he built his marriage on a foundation of deception. Was his ultimate sacrifice for his country, or was his greatest act of bravery the 64 years he spent loving one woman, even if it was under a false name? Now, we turn the question to you. What would you have done in Eleanor's place? Would you have walked away, preserving the beautiful memory of a life you thought was perfect? Or would you, like her, step into the shadows to uncover the complete truth? No matter the cost, which decision would have changed everything? Was the real love story the one she lived or the one she discovered? If this story of love and espionage captivated you, please share it with others who appreciate a tale that challenges the heart and mind. Subscribe to the channel to follow new sagas and explore the hidden worlds that lie just beneath the surface of our own.